They say that rock bottom is the solid foundation on which you rebuild your life. But what happens when the person kicking you down there is the one who vowed to protect you? Picture this. You are standing in a ballroom filled with the city's elite. You are holding a glass of champagne that costs more than your first car, and your husband, the man you sacrificed your career, your body, and your secrets for, taps his spoon against a glass. He isn't there to toast your anniversary. He's there to destroy you. But Martha Whitmore forgot one thing. A woman with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous person in the room. And all it took was one phone call to turn his victory speech into his eulogy. This is the story of how young Whitmore didn't just survive. She got even. The chandeliers in the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel didn't just sparkle. They judged, or at least that's how it felt to young Whitmore, as she stood by the entrance, gripping her clutch so hard her knuckles turned the color of old ivory. It was the 5th annual Whitmore Gala for Urban Renewal. 5 years ago, this event had been a potluck in a rented community center basement. Back then, Martha was just an ambitious city councilman with a crooked tie and a dream, and Young was the shark of a corporate lawyer who funded that dream, editing his speeches in red ink at 2 a.m. while nursing their newborn son, Leo. Now Martha was the candidate, the front-runner for the Senate seat. He was polished, tanned, and standing in the center of the room, surrounded by donors who looked at him like he was the second coming of JFK. Young adjusted her posture, wincing slightly. The numbness in her left leg, the secret she had kept from everyone, even Martha, was flaring up again. The doctor at Mount Sinai had called it clinically isolated syndrome, a precursor to MS, likely triggered by extreme stress. Stress, she thought bitterly. That's one word for it. "Smile, darling. You look like you're at a funeral." The voice was smooth, like expensive whiskey, but it burned on the way down. Young turned to see Martha looming over her. He was handsome in that devastating, calculated way, hair perfectly coiffed tuxedo, tailored by a man in London, whose name sounded like a sneeze. "I'm just tired, Martha," Young said, her voice barely a whisper. Leo had a rough night. The night terrors again. Martha's jaw tightened. He hated mentions of Leo's issues in public. It ruined the perfect family tableau. Jessica handled the nanny situation. You're not supposed to be tired. You're supposed to be glowing. The governor is here. Judge Harrison is here. Do not embarrass me, Young. I never have, she replied, looking him in the eye. See that you don't. He placed a hand on the small of her back. To the cameras flashing nearby, it was a gesture of affection. To Young, it was a steering mechanism. He pushed her forward. Go say hello to the board. And for God's sake, drink some water. You look gaunt. He walked away before she could respond instantly, melting into a group of developers, his laugh booming across the room, a practiced, resonant sound that tested well with focus groups. Young made her way to a high-top table near the periphery, needing to lean on something. She watched the room. She saw Jessica Vance Martha's 28-year-old campaign manager standing near the bar. Jessica was wearing a dress that was technically appropriate, but spiritually aggressive, a crimson sheath that screamed for attention. Young caught Jessica's eye. The younger woman didn't look away. She didn't smile. She just stared with a chilling, predatory calmness, then raised her martini glass in a mock toast. Young looked away first. She felt small. She felt erased. 3 months ago, Young had found the receipt. It wasn't anything cliché like lipstick on a collar. It was a receipt for a Cartier bracelet, the love bracelet gold with diamonds. Young didn't own a love bracelet. But 2 days later, she saw it on Jessica's wrist during a strategy meeting in their living room. When she confronted Martha, he hadn't denied it. He hadn't even looked up from his iPad. She's valuable to the campaign, Young. It's a bonus. Don't be pedestrian. Pedestrian. The word had haunted her. Young, who had graduated top of her class at Columbia Law. Young, who had brokered mergers worth billions before retiring to manage Martha's life. Now she was just the pedestrian wife, the aging accessory that didn't quite match the new decor. Mrs. Whitmore. Young jumped. A waiter was holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres. Mini beef Wellington. No, thank you, she managed. She looked at her phone. No messages. She checked the time, 8:15 p.m. The speeches were starting soon. She just needed to get through the next 2 hours. Then she could go home, take off the heels that felt like torture devices, and check on Leo. But the atmosphere in the room felt heavy, charged. Usually at these events, people flocked to her. She was the charming wife, the one who remembered their kids' names and asked about their vacations to Aspen. Tonight, people seemed to be giving her a wide berth. She saw Mrs. Galloway, the wife of the biggest construction magnate in the state, turn her back abruptly as Young approached. She saw 2 junior staffers whispering behind their hands, their eyes darting toward her, and then away. Paranoia, she told herself. It's just the medication. It's the fatigue. Suddenly, the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. The chatter died down, replaced by the polite clinking of silverware. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed, "please welcome the man of the hour, the future of our great state, Martha Whitmore." The applause was thunderous. Martha bounded onto the stage, energetic and youthful. He adjusted the microphone, waiting for the applause to die down, exactly 4 seconds the psychological sweet spot, before smiling. "Thank you," he said, his voice warm and humble. "Thank you all. We are here tonight to build a future, to build a foundation." He went through his standard stump speech. He charmed. He joked. He spoke about infrastructure and education. Then his tone changed. He looked down at the podium, then out into the crowd. He looked sad. He looked like a man carrying the weight of the world. "But we cannot build a future if we are not honest about the present," Martha said, his voice dropping an octave. "We talk about transparency in government, but transparency must start at home." Young's stomach dropped. The air in the room seemed to be sucked out by a giant vacuum. What is he doing? This wasn't in the script. She had read the script. Martha looked directly at her. The spotlight swung around, blinding her. "My wife Young," Martha said, and his voice cracked perfectly. "She has been my rock for 15 years. But for the past year, we have been fighting a battle in private. A battle against demons that simply became too strong." Young froze. Demons. I wanted to protect her. Martha continued, tears now glistening in his eyes. He was actually crying. I wanted to save her from herself. But when addiction takes hold of a family, when mental instability threatens the safety of our children, a gasp rippled through the room. Young stood up, her legs shaking violently. Addiction, safety of the children. She drank a glass of wine a week. She was the one who stayed up with Leo during his meltdowns, while Martha slept in the guest house. "It is with a broken heart," Martha said, staring at her with a look of profound, staged pity. "That I must announce that Young and I will be separating. I will be seeking full custody of our son for his own protection, while Young gets the help she so desperately needs at a facility we have selected for her." The room went silent. Dead silent. Young felt the blood drain from her face. This wasn't a divorce announcement. This was an execution. The silence that followed Martha's declaration was heavier than the crystal chandeliers overhead. It was a physical weight pressing down on Young's chest, making it impossible to breathe. 300 pairs of eyes belonging to judges, senators, CEOs, and gossip columnists were fixed on her. They weren't looking at her with sympathy. They were looking at her with morbid curiosity, like she was a car crash on the side of the highway. They were looking for the signs. Is she drunk right now? Look at how she's shaking. Look at how pale she is. Martha had weaponized her illness. The trembling, the fatigue, the stumbling, he had just reframed it all as addiction and instability. I ask, Martha continued, his voice regaining its strength, for your privacy and your prayers during this difficult time. This is not a political decision. This is a father's decision. He stepped back from the podium, head bowed. Jessica Vance rushed to his side, handing him a handkerchief, looking the picture of the supportive, capable aide. Young stood there, alone in the spotlight. Her mind was racing, trying to latch onto something logical. Full custody. He wanted to take Leo. He wanted to take her son, the boy who only calmed down when Young sang Blackbird to him, the boy who couldn't handle loud noises or changes in routine. Martha didn't even know the name of Leo's occupational therapist. Martha treated Leo like a broken prop that needed to be hidden away. He's discarding me, she realized with a cold, terrifying clarity. He has the donor money. He has the poll numbers. I am the last loose end. She looked around the room. She saw Judge Harrison shaking his head sadly. She saw her friends looking at their plates. No one moved toward her. She was radioactive. She needed to leave. She needed to get out of this room before she screamed or collapsed. She turned, her movements jerky and uncoordinated due to the shock and the neuropathy in her leg. As she took a step, her heel caught on the edge of the carpet. She stumbled. It wasn't a bad fall. She caught herself on the back of a chair. But in that silent judging room, the sound of the chair scraping against the floor sounded like a gunshot. "Oh dear," someone whispered loud enough to be heard. "She can barely stand." "Tragic," another voice murmured. "Absolutely tragic." Humiliation, hot and acidic, flooded her veins. Martha watched her from the stage. He didn't move to help her. He just watched, a mask of sorrow on his face. But his eyes were cold, hard flint. He had won. He had destroyed her credibility in under 3 minutes. If she fought him now, it would just be the rantings of the unstable ex-wife. Young straightened herself up. She let go of the chair. She didn't run. She refused to run. She walked toward the exit, forcing her left leg to cooperate, forcing her head to stay high. The click-clack of her heels was the only sound in the cavernous room. She pushed through the heavy double doors and into the cool, quiet hallway of the hotel. As soon as the doors closed behind her, the facade crumbled. She leaned against the wall, gasping for air. Her hands were shaking so badly, she couldn't unclasp her clutch. He's going to take Leo. She had to call her lawyer. She had to call her brother. She fumbled for her phone. It was vibrating. She stared at the screen. It was an unknown number. No caller ID. Usually she wouldn't answer, But her world had just ended. What did it matter? She slid her thumb across the screen and held the phone to her ear. "Hello." Her voice was jagged, broken. "Young." The voice on the other end was male, raspy, and sounded like it was coming from inside a wind tunnel, or maybe from a very old memory. "Who is this?" Young asked, wiping a tear from her cheek. I can't talk right now." "Don't hang up," the voice commanded. It wasn't threatening, but it was urgent. "You just left the ballroom. I'm watching the live feed. He did it, didn't he?" He pulled the unstable wife card. Young stiffened. She looked down the empty hallway. "Who are you?" "My name is Preston Walsh." Young stopped breathing. Preston Walsh. The name was a ghost story in the Whitmore household. 5 years ago, Preston had been Martha's campaign treasurer and closest friend. Then overnight, he had vanished. Martha told everyone Preston had embezzled funds and fled to non-extradition country to avoid prosecution. Martha had played the victim then, too, the trusting friend betrayed by a criminal. Preston is in Belize," Young whispered, repeating the lie she had been told 1,000 times. "Or dead." "I'm not in Belize, Young, and I'm certainly not dead, though your husband tried his best on that second count." Young's grip on the phone tightened. "Why are you calling me?" "Because I know what he's planning to do next," Preston said. "The rehab facility he mentioned, it's Serenity Hills, isn't it? Owned by the Shell Company, managed by his cousin." Young didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. "If you go there, Young, you will never get out. They will drug you until you actually are what he says you are. And Leo will be sent to a boarding school in Switzerland that specializes in difficult cases. He will be out of sight, out of mind, so Martha can focus on the Senate." A primal noise escaped Young's throat. "No. I won't let him." "You can't stop him with tears, Young, and you can't stop him with the truth, not the version of the truth you have. He owns the narrative now. He owns the judge. He owns the press." "Then what do I do?" she pleaded, looking back at the closed doors of the ballroom. She could hear the muffled applause starting up again. Martha was likely accepting an award on her behalf. "You need to nuke the narrative," Preston said. "I have something. I've been holding on to it for 5 years, waiting for him to make a mistake. Tonight, when he went after you publicly, that was his mistake. He got arrogant." "What do you have?" "I have the ledger. The real ledger. Not the one he showed the FEC. And I have the recording from the night the girl died." Young felt the hallway spin. "What girl?" "Turn around, Young." Young turned. At the far end of the hallway, standing near the service elevators, was a man in a wheelchair. He was older than she remembered his face, scarred, wearing a faded baseball cap. He held a phone to his ear. "Walk to me," Preston said through the phone, though she could see his lips moving down the hall. "We have about 5 minutes before his security detail realizes you're not in the bathroom. If you want to keep your son, if you want to bury Martha Whitmore, you need to come with me right now." Young looked at the ballroom doors. Inside was her husband, the man who had promised to love her in sickness and in health, currently cementing her destruction. She looked at the scarred man in the wheelchair. A ghost. A criminal. "Why should I trust you?" she asked, her voice trembling. Preston lowered the phone. He spoke loud enough for his voice to carry down the marble corridor. "Because, Young, I didn't embezzle that money. I was the one who found out, He was using campaign funds to pay off the family of the girl he hit with his car in 2019. And when I tried to stop him, my brakes failed on the I-95. He tapped his paralyzed legs. He took my legs, Young. Don't let him take your son. Young didn't hesitate anymore. She kicked off her heels. She left them lying on the expensive carpet like dropped weapons. She walked toward Preston Walsh. "Where are we going?" she asked as she reached him. Preston pressed the elevator button. "Back inside." Young stared at him. "What? You're not running away, Young. That's what a guilty person does. We're going back inside. I have a flash drive, and I know for a fact that the AV guy in the booth is an unpaid intern who hates Martha." The elevator doors chimed open. "We're going to crash the party," Preston said, a dark smile forming on his scarred face. "Ready for your rebuttal." Young thought of Leo. She thought of the love bracelet on Jessica's wrist. She thought of the unstable label stamped on her forehead. She stepped into the elevator. "I'm ready." The service elevator smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner, a stark contrast to the lavender-scented air of the ballroom, but to Young it smelled like oxygen, like truth. She stood barefoot on the metal floor, her expensive gown trailing in the dust. Beside her, Preston Walsh sat in his wheelchair, his knuckles white as he gripped the armrests. Up close, the damage Martha had inflicted was undeniable. A jagged scar ran from Preston's hairline to his jaw. His legs, once capable of running marathons, were wasted away beneath his trousers. "He told me you stole from the pension fund." Young said, her voice quiet. The elevator hummed as it ascended toward the mezzanine level which overlooked the ballroom. "Martha is a storyteller." "Young," Preston replied, his eyes fixed on the floor indicators. "He tells the story that fits the moment. With me, it was embezzlement. With you, it's insanity. He needed me gone because I saw him hit Maya Lin." "Maya Lin?" Young frowned. The name sounded vaguely familiar. "The volunteer. The one who went missing 3 years ago." "She didn't go missing. She went through the windshield of Martha's S-Class at 2 a.m. after the primary victory party. He was drunk. He wasn't supposed to be driving. I was following behind in my car to make sure he got home. I saw it happen." Young felt bile rise in her throat. She remembered that night. Martha had come home at 4 a.m. pale and shaking, claiming he had eaten bad shellfish. He had spent the next 3 days in bed. "He made me help him move the car." Preston continued, his voice devoid of emotion, like he had replayed this trauma 1,000 times. "We paid off a corrupt cop to lose the report. We paid the family an anonymous settlement from the campaign slush fund. That's the money I supposedly stole. But I kept a copy of the dashcam footage from my car. I told Martha I destroyed it. But he never believed me. That's why my brakes failed a week later." The elevator dinged. They were on the second floor. "Why wait until now?" Young asked, stepping out and holding the door for his chair. "Because until tonight, you were on his team. You were the formidable Mrs. Whitmore. If I came to you, you would have turned me in to protect your family. But tonight he discarded you. He made you a liability, and a liability is just a loose end waiting to be cut." Preston stopped his wheelchair and looked up at her. "Young, your leg. The numbness. What about it? Does Martha make you a nightly herbal tea for your nerves?" Young froze. "Every night. For the past 6 months. It was a ritual. Drink this, darling. It'll help you sleep." "Yes," she whispered. "Thallium," Preston said grimly. in microdoses. It mimics autoimmune disorders, numbness, fatigue, hair loss, confusion. He hasn't been caring for you, young. He's been poisoning you, just enough to make you look sick, but not enough to kill you. Yet. The world tilted on its axis. The clumsiness, the brain fog. It wasn't stress. It wasn't MS. It was Martha. He had been slowly killing her while smiling in her face. A fury cold and sharp as a diamond crystallized in Young's chest. The fear vanished. The sadness evaporated. All that was left was a burning need for nuclear retaliation. "Where is the AV booth?" Young asked. "End of the hall. The tech lead is a kid named Ben. I hired him as an intern 5 years ago. He knows what Martha is. He just needs a push." They moved down the hallway. Below them, through the glass railing, they could see the ballroom. Martha was still on stage, bathing in the adoration of the crowd. He was holding up a photo of Leo. "I am doing this for my son." Martha's voice echoed through the speakers, distorted slightly by the distance. "To give him a stable father." Young didn't look down. She marched to the door marked audio/visual, staff only, and pushed it open. Inside the room was dark, lit only by the glow of a dozen monitors. A young man with messy hair and a headset was tapping furiously on a tablet. He jumped when the door opened. "Hey, restricted area, you can't." The young man stopped. He saw young Whitmore, barefoot and disheveled. Then he saw the man in the wheelchair. "Mr. Walsh," the kid gasped. I heard you were in Belize." "Plans changed, Ben," Preston said, rolling into the room. "We're doing a remix, tonight." Ben looked from Preston to Young. He looked at the monitors showing Martha's face. He looked at the security feed, showing 2 large men in earpieces scanning the lobby, clearly looking for Young. "They're looking for her," Ben said nervously. "If I mess with the feed, I'll lose my job. I'll get blacklisted." Young stepped forward. She placed her hand on the console. "Ben," she said. Her voice was steady, commanding the voice of the lawyer who used to terrify CEOs. "If you don't do this, Martha Whitmore becomes a senator. And if he becomes a senator, he becomes untouchable. You know what he is. Preston told me you know." Ben swallowed hard. He yelled at me once. Threw a hot coffee at me. Because the mic feedbacked. Burned my neck. He poisoned his wife, Preston added casually. And he killed a girl. Ben's eyes widened. "This drive." Preston held up a small silver USB stick. "It contains a video file. I need it on the main projector. And I need the audio piped through the main array. Max volume. Can you do it?" Ben looked at the screen where Martha was now shaking hands with the governor. He looked at the scar on Preston's face. "I can override the laptop," Ben whispered. "But as soon as I do, they'll storm the booth. It'll take them maybe 2 minutes to get up here." 2 minutes is all we need," Young said. "Do it." Ben took the drive. His hands were shaking, but he plugged it in. "Okay." Ben typed a command. "Bypassing the campaign proxy. Killing the live feed. Ready in 3, 2. Young walked to the large glass window of the booth that looked directly down onto the stage. She wanted to see his face. 1, Ben said. He hit enter. In the ballroom, the applause was dying down. Martha was beaming one hand on the podium, the other waving to the balcony where the VIP donors sat. "And so," Martha said, leaning into the microphone, "let us move forward with courage. Let us be the light in the dark. Screech." A high-pitched feedback squeal tore through the room. Guests covered their ears. The crystal glasses on the tables vibrated. Martha frowned, tapping the microphone. "Is this... Can we get some tech support, please?" He chuckled, trying to diffuse the tension. Even the best technology has hiccups, right? Suddenly, the giant screen behind him, which had been displaying the campaign logo, a stylized sun rising over a field, flickered black. The room murmured. Jessica Vance, standing near the stage steps, spoke hurriedly into her headset. "Cut the feed. Go to the backup. What is going on?" Then a sound filled the room. It wasn't music. It wasn't a speech. It was the sound of wind. The sound of an engine revving. "Martha, slow down. You're doing 90. The voice on the speakers was unmistakable. It was Preston Walsh, but he sounded younger, panicked. "Shut up, Preston. I'm fine. I'm the best driver you know." The second voice was Martha, but it was slurred, heavy with alcohol. The entire room went dead silent. Martha froze on stage. He looked back at the screen. An image appeared. It was grainy dashcam footage, stamped with a date, November 4th, 2019. It showed the rear of a black Mercedes swerving across the lanes of a highway. "Turn it off!" Martha screamed, his good guy mask instantly vanishing. He waved frantically at the back of the room. "Cut the power. It's a deep fake. It's AI." But the video continued. "Martha, watch out." Crunch. The sound was sickeningly loud. It was the sound of metal hitting flesh and bone. The black Mercedes on the screen swerved violently. Tail lights spinning before slamming into the guardrail. On the screen, the dashcam vehicle. Preston's car pulled over. The recording showed Preston running toward the Mercedes, but the audio kept playing from inside Preston's car, capturing what happened next. "Oh God. Oh God, Martha. You hit her." She was walking on the shoulder. Is she dead?" Martha's voice terrified. "I don't know." "Call 911. No, 911. Do you know what day it is?" "Preston, I just won the primary. If I call the cops, I'm done. My life is over." "She's bleeding, Martha. We have to help her." "Get her off the road. Throw her in the ditch. We'll say I was home. You drove. No, I was home. Listen to me, Preston. I will ruin you if you make that call. I will bury you." The gasps in the ballroom were audible even from the booth. Mrs. Galloway dropped her wine glass. It shattered, but no one looked down. Every eye was glued to the screen. Martha looked small now. He looked like a cornered animal. He looked toward Jessica Vance, but she was slowly backing away, her face pale. The audio cut to a new clip, a phone recording. It's handled Preston. The money is in the offshore account. The family thinks it was a hit and run by a trucker. You need to stop asking questions. Accidents happen. Heroes are necessary. Casualties are inevitable. Then a third clip. This one was recent. Very recent. "She's getting suspicious, Jessica. I need to up the dosage on the tea. Just enough to get her committed. Once she's in Serenity Hills, I get power of attorney. Then we can liquidate her trust to cover the campaign debt. She's worth more to me, crazy, than she is sane." That was the final nail. The video cut to black. For 10 seconds, there was absolute silence. No one moved. No one breathed. The horror of what they had just heard The callousness, the murder, the calculated poisoning of a spouse was too much to process instantly. Martha stood alone on the stage. The spotlight was still on him, merciless and bright. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at the crowd, searching for an ally, searching for a way to spin this. "Lies," he croaked, but his voice was weak without the microphone, which Ben had cut. "Technological manipulation." From the mezzanine balcony, a movement caught the crowd's eye. Young Whitmore stepped up to the railing. She was illuminated by the ambient light of the chandeliers. She was barefoot. Her hair was messy. She looked exhausted. But she stood with a posture of iron. Next to her, visible to everyone below, was Preston Walsh in his wheelchair, the man Martha claimed was an embezzler in Belize. "It's not a lie, Martha," Young said. Her voice wasn't amplified, but in the dead silence of the ballroom, it carried like a bell. She looked down at the sea of faces, the people who had shunned her 10 minutes ago. "He poisoned me," Young said, her voice trembling with rage, not weakness. "He killed a young girl named Maya Lin, and he tried to kill his best friend to cover it up." She pointed a finger at her husband. "You wanted to announce a separation. Martha. You wanted full custody. You can have the separation, but you will never, ever touch my son again." Martha's face contorted into a snarl. He forgot the cameras. He forgot the donors. He lunged toward the stairs of the stage, pointing up at the balcony. "You bitch! You ungrateful, crazy—" "Mr. Whitmore!" The booming voice came from the main entrance. The double doors swung open. 4 police officers strode in, followed by 2 detectives in suits. Preston had been busy in the elevator. He hadn't just called Young. He had forwarded the files to the State Attorney General, an old rival of Martha's. "Martha Whitmore!" the lead detective shouted, walking down the aisle. "Place your hands behind your head." Martha looked at the police. He looked at Jessica Vance, who was currently slipping out a side exit, a futile effort, as officers were waiting there too. He looked up at Young. For a moment, their eyes locked. He looked for the submissive, sick wife he had created. He didn't find her. He found the shark who used to win impossible cases. "This is a mistake," Martha yelled as the officers grabbed his arms. "Do you know who I am? I am the next senator of this state. You have the right to remain silent," the officer said, handcuffing him roughly, "and I suggest you use it," as they dragged him away, kicking and screaming obscenities that would surely be on the morning news. The room turned its attention back to the balcony. Young felt her knees give way. The adrenaline was fading, and the effects of the thallium were still in her system. She gripped the railing. Preston reached up and took her hand. "You did it, Young." She looked down at him and managed a weak smile. "We did it." Below them, the crowd began to talk, the hum of shock, of scandal, of history being witnessed. But Young didn't care about them. She needed to get to Leo. She needed to get the poison out of her body. But as she turned to leave the railing, she saw Mrs. Galloway, the woman who had turned her back on Young earlier, looking up. Mrs. Galloway was crying. She slowly started to clap. It wasn't a polite golf clap. It was a slow, rhythmic clap of respect. Someone else joined in. Then another. Soon the entire ballroom was applauding. They weren't applauding the gala. They were applauding the woman who had just burned the kingdom to the ground to save herself. Young didn't wave. She didn't bow. She just walked away back into the shadows of the hallway, leaving the wreckage of her old life behind. 3 months later. The path to justice is rarely a straight line. Usually it's a jagged scar. Young learned this as she sat in the front row of the Superior Court. her hands folded in her lap. She looked different now. The gaunt, terrified woman from the gala was gone. In her place was a woman who had gained 10 pounds of healthy weight, whose eyes were clear, and who wore a navy blue suit that signaled war. Martha sat at the defense table. He looked good. Too good. Even in custody, he had managed to maintain his appearance. His silver tongue hadn't atrophied. If anything, it had sharpened. The media had dubbed it the trial of the century. Outside vans from every major network lined the streets. The public was divided. Half believed Young was a hero who survived a murder plot. The other half, they bought Martha's new narrative. And his new narrative was terrifyingly brilliant. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Martha's lawyer, a shark named Leonard Sterling, paced the floor. "We live in an age of digital fabrication. We live in an age where you can make the Pope endorse a brand of sneakers with a few clicks of a button." Sterling pointed a finger at Preston Walsh, who sat in the gallery watching grimly from his wheelchair. "The prosecution wants you to believe a video file provided by a disgruntled fired employee, a man who blames Martha Whitmore for his own tragic accident. They want you to believe audio clips that were found on a flash drive. But we have expert witnesses, 3 of them, who will testify that the metadata on those files is corrupt, that the audio signatures show signs of AI synthesis." Young felt a cold knot in her stomach. It was the deep-fake defense. It was the nightmare scenario Preston had warned her about. Because the original dashcam SD card had been damaged in Preston's crash, they were relying on the digital copy. It was enough to create reasonable doubt. Martha turned to look at Young. He winked, a tiny, almost imperceptible wink. "I'm going to get away with it," his eyes said. "And then I'm coming for Leo." The prosecution, led by District Attorney Reynolds, called their witnesses. The toxicologist confirmed thallium was in Young's hair, but Sterling countered on cross-examination. "Is it not true, doctor, that thallium is also found in certain rat poisons? And is it not true that Mrs. Whitmore was gardening heavily during her mental breakdown? Could she not have accidentally exposed herself? It's possible but unlikely given the levels." "Possible." Sterling interrupted. "Thank you." Day by day, Young watched the case crumble. Martha's team painted her as a paranoid, unstable woman who fabricated a conspiracy with Preston to destroy a cheating husband. They admitted the affair with Jessica that was undeniable, but they spun it as a moral failing, not a crime. "He's a cheater," Sterling argued, "not a killer." By the end of the second week, the jury looked skeptical. They looked tired. Martha was winning. "We need a Hail Mary," Preston told Young during the recess. They were in a private witness room. "Sterling is eating the forensic evidence alive." "Where is Jessica?" Young asked. "She's the key. She was there. She saw him dose the tea." "Jessica is in the wind," Preston said, rubbing his temples. "Her lawyer says she's pleading the fifth." "She's terrified, Young. She knows what Martha is capable of. She thinks if she talks, she ends up like Maya Lin." "She needs to know she's not safe either," Young said, standing up. "Get me her number, her burner number." "Young, you can't contact a witness. It's witness tampering." "I'm not going to tamper with her," Young said, her voice hard. "I'm going to save her." Young didn't call. She knew Martha's associates would be monitoring the lines. Instead, she drove to the one place she knew Jessica went when she was stressed, the St. Jude's Chapel on the East Side. Jessica wasn't religious, but she was superstitious. Young had seen her go there before big campaign speeches to light a candle for luck. Young found her in the back pew, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses, looking nothing like the crimson-clad vixen from the gala. She looked like a child. Young slid into the pew behind her. "He's going to win, isn't he?" Jessica whispered, not turning around. She knew who it was. "He might," Young said. "And if he wins, he walks. And if he walks, do you think he'll let you live, Jessica? You're the only one left who knows about the tea. You're the loose end." Jessica's shoulders shook. "I didn't know about the girl. Maya. I didn't know he killed her until the video." "But you knew he was poisoning me." Jessica turned around. Her face was pale, devoid of makeup. "He told me it was just sedatives, to keep you calm, so the divorce would go smoothly. I didn't know it was thallium until I saw your hair falling out. You watched me die, Jessica." Young said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "You wore my jewelry and watched me die, but I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to tell you that Leonard Sterling isn't protecting you. He's paid by Martha. He's stalling until the trial is over so they can deal with you quietly." Jessica began to cry. "I can't testify. I have nothing. No proof. It's my word against his." "You have the bracelet," Young said softly. Jessica looked down at her wrist. The Cartier love bracelet was gone. "I sold it." Jessica sniffed. "Not that bracelet," Young said. "The other one. The one Martha doesn't know about." Jessica froze. She looked at Young with wide eyes. "I checked the household accounts, Jessica. I know Martha paid for your apartment. I know he paid for your car. But there was a withdrawal 3 weeks ago. $10,000 in cash. Martha didn't authorize that. You did. You were stealing from him." "I was saving up to run away," Jessica hissed. "Exactly." Young leaned forward. "You were stealing from the campaign funds. That makes you an accomplice to embezzlement. Unless what? Unless you turn state's evidence. You give them the insurance." "I don't have insurance." "Yes, you do." Young bluffed. She stared deep into the younger woman's eyes, channeling every ounce of confidence she had left. "Martha is a narcissist. He keeps trophies. He kept the dash cam video. He kept the thallium bottle. Where is it, Jessica? Did he give it to you to dispose of? And you kept it, didn't you, because you knew one day he'd turn on you?" Jessica's breath hitched. Young had guessed right. "It's in my storage unit," Jessica whispered. "The bottle. And his handwritten journal. The one he uses to track the bribes." Young closed her eyes and exhaled. "Get it. Bring it to court tomorrow, or Martha walks and we both end up in a ditch." The next morning, the courtroom was electric. The defense had rested. It was time for the prosecution's rebuttal. "The people call Jessica Miller," the bailiff announced, using Jessica's real surname. Martha's head snapped up. He looked at his lawyer, Sterling, who looked equally confused. This wasn't on the schedule. Jessica walked in. She wasn't wearing white. She was wearing a black turtleneck and slacks. She looked somber. She carried a sealed evidence bag. When she took the stand, she didn't look at Martha. She looked at the jury. "Ms. Miller," D.A. Reynolds asked, "what is in that bag?" "It is a bottle of thallium sulfate," Jessica said, her voice clear, "and a ledger, a black moleskin notebook." "Where did you get these items?" "Martha gave me the bottle to throw in the river 2 days before the gala. He said, the job is done. But I was scared. So I kept it. And the ledger. He kept it in his safe. I knew the combination. It lists every bribe he paid to zoning commissioners. It lists the payout to the police sergeant who buried the Maya Lin file. And Jessica paused, looking directly at Martha for the first time. It lists the withdrawals from the Leo Whitmore Trust. Martha stood up. She's lying. She's a thief. She's trying to frame me. Sit down, Mr. Whitmore. Judge Harrison banged his gavel. Miss Miller, the DA continued, why did you decide to come forward today? You had immunity before, but you refused to speak. Jessica took a deep breath. She placed a hand on her stomach. Because yesterday, I went to the doctor. The room went silent. I'm pregnant, Jessica said. It's Martha's. A collective gasp swept through the room like a gust of wind. Young, sitting in the front row, felt her heart stop. A baby. He had started a new family while trying to murder his old one. I realized, Jessica continued, tears streaming down her face, that if he could do that to Leo's mother, what would he do to me? What would he do to this child if we became inconvenient? She opened the ledger to a marked page and held it up. He didn't just steal from donors, Jessica said. He emptied his son's trust fund. Leo has nothing left. Martha spent it all on the campaign and on hush money. The jury looked at Martha. The deep fake doubt was gone. The mental illness defense was dead. They weren't looking at a politician anymore. They were looking at a monster who stole from his disabled son and poisoned his wife. Martha slumped in his chair. Leonard Sterling closed his briefcase. He knew it was over. But the twists weren't done. During the cross-examination, Martha, representing himself after firing Sterling in a fit of rage, tried to salvage the situation. You're lying about the baby, Martha sneered at Jessica. You're doing this for sympathy. I'm not, Jessica said calmly. And I'm not the only one you stole from, Martha. Do you recognize the name Emerald Holdings in your ledger? Martha went pale, paler than Young had ever seen him. That's a shell company. No, Jessica said. It's not. I looked it up. Emerald Holdings isn't a shell company. It's a holding firm owned by the cartel of Sinaloa. You weren't just laundering campaign funds, Martha. You were washing drug money. The courtroom erupted. The judge was banging the gavel so hard the handle cracked. Young sat back in her bench. Drug money. That explained the desperation. That explained why he couldn't just divorce her. He needed the spousal privilege. He needed the clean image. If he lost the election, he wasn't just facing jail time for fraud. He was facing a cartel hit squad for losing their investment. Martha looked at the back of the room. Two men in dark suits who had been sitting quietly in the back row every day stood up and walked out. They weren't reporters. They weren't fans. Martha started to shake. He turned to the judge. I want to plead guilty, Martha stammered, sweat pouring down his face. I want protective custody, solitary confinement. Now please. He realized too late that prison was the only safe place left for him. Young watched him unravel. The man who had controlled her life, who had made her feel small and insane, was now begging to be locked in a cage. She stood up and walked out of the courtroom before the judge could even rule. She didn't need to hear the sentence. The look of terror in Martha's eyes was justice enough. Outside on the courthouse steps, the air was crisp. Preston was waiting for her at the bottom of the ramp. Did you hear? Young asked. The cartel connection here. Preston smirked. Jessica really dropped the nuke. What happens to her? Witness protection, probably, especially with the baby. Young looked up at the sky. And us. Preston spun his wheelchair around. Well, Martha's assets are frozen. The trust is gone. The house will be seized. I don't care about the house, Young said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a single crumpled piece of paper. It was a drawing Leo had made that morning, a drawing of a bird flying over a wall. I have my law degree, Young said. I have my son, and for the first time in 15 years I have the truth. She began to walk down the street, the wind catching her hair. She wasn't Mrs. Whitmore, the senator's wife, anymore. She was just young, and she was free. Martha Whitmore was granted his request for solitary confinement, though not for the reasons he hoped. He is currently serving 3 consecutive life sentences at a maximum security federal penitentiary. To this day, he refuses to go into the general population, terrified that the reach of the Sinaloa cartel extends beyond the prison walls. He spends 23 hours a day in a 6x8 cell, the same size as the walk-in closet where he used to hide his illegal ledger. Jessica entered the Witness Protection Program 3 weeks after the trial. She gave birth to a baby girl in a quiet town in Montana. She named her Maya, a small penance for the silence she kept for so long. As for Young, she didn't just survive, she evolved. She returned to law, but not to the high-rise corporate world that had hardened her. She opened a small practice dedicated to helping spouses trapped in financial abuse and coercive control. She works out of a modest office with a view of the park, and her paralegal is a bright young man named Ben, the former AV intern who helped her turn the tables that fateful night. Preston Walsh became a silent partner in her firm. He used his portion of the whistleblower reward to fund a foundation for victims of vehicular negligence. He and Young meet for coffee every Sunday. They don't talk about Martha. They talk about the future. And Leo. Leo is thriving. Without the tension of a perfect household, his anxiety lessened. He still has challenges, but he also has a mother who fights for him, a mother who proved that rock bottom isn't the end. It's just the place where you stop digging and start climbing. And that is the story of young Whitmore. It's a reminder that sometimes the people who smile the brightest in public are hiding the darkest secrets in private. Martha thought he could discard Young because she was broken. He forgot that broken glass is sharp. He forgot that a mother protecting her child is a force of nature that no amount of money or political influence can suppress. Young's story isn't just about revenge. It's about reclaiming your narrative when everyone else tries to write you off. She proved that your lowest point can be the solid ground you need to build a new life, one based on truth, not appearance. What would you have done if you were in Young's shoes? Would you have run away with Preston, or would you have marched back into that ballroom to face the music? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a twist. We have an even crazier story coming up next week about a lottery winner whose family vanished the day the check cleared. You do not want to miss it. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there.